I got to tell you, when I first presented 5G, which is now years ago, and it feels like 100 5G classes ago, I said it then and I'll say it now. This is the most powerful G on the planet. And in the presentation, not the way I teach it now, but the way I used to teach it back then, lead off as something like this. So the classic things that you normally think of when we talk about 5G. So 5G is going to feature a new radio technology, which not called LTE, not called EUTRAN. In fact, it doesn't have a very fancy name at all. It's literally called New Radio, or NR for short. Now, new radio features millimeter wave. Now, the higher the frequency or the shorter the wavelength, the more bits per second. So this is promising somewhere in the 2 gigabits per second range. And what millimeter wave delivers, you see, is wide open spectrum, because it's way above 6 gigahertz. It's up in the 24 gig plus range, up to 100 gig almost. It features small cells and beamforming and massive MIMO and non-orthogonal multiple access, which I'm going to go over in a minute. And these are the things right now that are getting all of the press. But this is actually what I don't want to feature this morning. I want to take a look at the future Gs and what happens with the advent of 5G. So let's get this millimeter wave issue out of the way first, understand what that brings us, and then ultimately what 5G does with all of this. So yeah, it's wide open spectrum, which means no competition, tons of capacity. Now, because you're using the real high frequency range, the millimeter wave, the ability to beamform becomes very possible, because dealing with high frequencies of millimeter wave, radio becomes more like light. Now there's pluses and minuses to that. When you go into the real high frequencies like this, you get very high bits per second. But if I put a mobile phone behind this hospital right here, I cannot connect to it. The hospital will actually shadow the phone, can't see it at all. However, because of beamforming, what could actually happen, in fact, what is going to happen, is that city furniture like street lamps right here can actually have a small cell site built on them. While you can connect them with fiber, it's also possible to beamform to them, which is really cool. Now, the macro cell, that's the big cell tower that maybe we're used to seeing, like that 4G one over there. But the 5G ones look quite different, because each one of these little dots is actually a separate antenna. And if you drive all of those separate antennas as an array, you can play around with the phase adjustments of the signal and actually cause a very tight beam, like a ray of light, to go in a certain direction. And what's interesting is each one of these separate beams is actually using the same spectrum over and over and over again. Whenever you see high spectral reuse, you get into the real high bit per second range of what's happening. Also, by actually using radio itself as the front haul, then a small cell could actually connect back to the network with front haul as radio. That's intriguing. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. You can certainly run fiber right to the small cells. In fact, that's one of the design issues that we cover, is you don't have to do it this way. 5G has a unique way to connect antennas to the network that are actually unique, in the sense that you can reach with radio, or you can actually reach with a new version of fiber connectivity, which is actually quite clever. So that's beamforming. The massive MIMO approach is that I can have multiple phones right here that have multiple antennas on them, and each separate antenna basically creating a frequency reuse opportunity, which actually allows the phone to reuse the same spectrum twice. It doesn't double it. It's not quite that good. But with the arrangement that's used in 5G, the non-orthogonal multiple access approach, they're getting really close to that 2x. It's more like 1.7. But so the point is, a lot of cool new stuff, which for the most part means way faster internet access. And that, regrettably, that's what's getting all of the press these days. Now, you may have heard of slicing. I don't have time to go into that in great depth right now, but 5G promises, at least it has defined, 4 slices. Now, the idea is that all of this, and I'm going to intentionally circle LTE devices as well, all of those devices need to work together to produce networking service that could fall into the category of the number 1, 2, 3, or 4. They are actually enumerated, where the number 1 slice, called enhanced mobile broadband, delivers the multi-gigabit service. Effectively, that slice number 1, is network connectivity that you know right now, except really, really fast, like 100 or 1,000 times faster. Now, just skip it up here to the massive machine type communications. That's for Internet of Things. Suddenly we're interested in really, really slow. Don't want it to go fast at all. We do want it to be reliable, but mostly want it to be cheap. And I don't want to reinvent the network. I want the same network to support this kind of service as well. And we continue with number 3, which is the ultra reliable low latency communications. And the thinking there is that this is multi-megabit per second, but the connection just doesn't drop. It stays. And I don't want to redesign the network for that either. It's just that if I request slicing of that service, then that's what I expect to get. And if you're thinking, wow, these are looking like an SLA, or a service level agreement, yeah, actually that would be a good analogy, at least the way I'm explaining it right now, to understand slicing. Continuing with probably the coolest is the vehicle to anything. That's vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, a vehicle to a network, vehicle to pedestrian. The idea here is that a fire truck drives down the street, and vehicle to infrastructure would allow the fire truck to communicate with city infrastructure and make sure it sees nothing but green lights as it's driving to wherever its destination is. Lastly, the multifunction edge computing, originally called mobile edge computing, is definitely falls into the category of cool. And I think it's one of the things that are one of the more interesting stuff that 5G and all future Gs are going to take advantage of, which is the cloudification of everything we know cellular. So what I've covered is the basics of, this is what's getting all the racket and all the press, really fast internet access. But if we are telecom professionals, then there's something else that is super interesting to 5G. And let's explore that.
This video is brought to you by Alta3 Research. We offer training solutions both on-site and online so that you can choose the method that works best for you. If you like this video, check out the links in the description box below for more information on our course offerings. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.